So welcome everyone. Today's webinar is about trauma, how untreated trauma can affect our lives, and what are the first signs of trauma that you have to notice within yourself or within someone, your loved ones, so that you can help that person to identify this first initial symptoms and signs before it goes out of proportion and really starts affecting the life of that person, yours, or everyone else. So, I am Sharmishta Mitra. I work with Illuminations Wellbeing Center. I am basically a transpersonal psychologist, but I'm also a regression therapist, a transpersonal regression therapist and hypnotherapist. I am a practitioner of CBT, trauma therapies. I have integrated into my approach a lot of therapies which I have learned throughout the process of my journey of well-being and mental health. And my approach is usually integrated in my sessions and my workshops. I don't focus basically on one modality anymore. So whatever is best for the client or whatever suits the client's need, that's what I use during the sessions. Today, as I already told you that I'm a trauma therapist too, I have learned different modalities to work with trauma. It could be the mental trauma, it could be physical trauma. What I learned in my experiences, any kind of trauma that you have experienced, by trauma, usually we have this understanding that it has to be something very intensive, which is not true. Trauma is any experience that you had, but you did not have the resource to overcome the consequences of that experience. And that stays in our memory as a limitation. It creates a fundamental limitation within us, which helps us or which kind of enables us not to function as like we would like to, doesn't make us our ability to function to our highest potential is being limited by the effect of the trauma. And the trauma stays in the memory, not only in the mind as memory, but in the physical body as cellular memory. So when we are dealing with trauma, we have to work with the body as well as the mind. Working with the mind alone doesn't work because most of the time the mind is so overwhelmed with a lot of information, a lot of thoughts, a lot of thoughts which are destructive and negative, that any kind of mind work, the clients have a lot of resistance and reluctance to work with the mind. The best process at that moment is to work with the body so that we can help the client release the trapped emotions or the trapped energy or the trapped memory inside the body, which was related to the trauma. And once the body comes back in harmony, then the mind is much more relaxed to receive new ways of thinking, new understanding of the problem, and kind of evolve and expand the awareness so that you can now live a more holistic, a whole life. It's not anymore limited to your past. So I will talk about how I understand trauma, and then I would definitely encourage you all to ask me questions related to anything that you want to know personally. You can put your questions on the chat if you don't like to talk, or you can just unmute yourself when I ask you to and ask me directly so that I can help you with a better understanding of what's going on. And I would really appreciate if you give me, your feedback in the end. So, as you know that when our brain is the greatest supercomputer on the earth, a complex network of about 100 million neurons, and it's not only great as a processing unit, organizing information, but it's really, really fast. Every second, somewhere between 18 to 640 trillion electron impulses are zipping through our brain. This matrix carefully encodes and stores Your memories and experiences collectively make up the unique mosaic of who you are. So what happens when a shock disrupts the system? And why is it that the shock or trauma can linger in the body and the mind, affecting your health for years to come? The truth is that trauma is not just in your head. As I was saying, it leaves a real physical imprint on your body, jarring your memory storage processes and changing your brain. Untreated trauma, untreated past trauma, can have a big impact on your future health. The emotional and the physical reaction it triggers can make you more prone to serious health conditions, including heart attacks, stroke, obesity, diabetes, cancer. According to the Harvard Medical School research, this is what they came up with. Additionally, the risk of developing mental and physical health problems increases with the number of traumatic events you have experienced. For example, your risk for problems is much higher if you had 3 or more negative experiences. And these are called adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. That's what has been understood, how it is related to the condition that or the experience that you are going through as an adult, and how it is related or associated with your adverse childhood experiences. From outward appearance, a trauma survivor may look whole and healthy, but trauma can fester like an invisible wound, weakening the body's defense until it manifests in the form of an illness. So how does that happen? Like, how can trauma weaken your body's defense? So what happens is, when you are still having that memory of trauma, it could be anything. It could be, a physical, like physically going through an accident, meeting an accident, or seeing someone die, or having an experience which was extremely traumatic. Whatever it was or not, you are constantly thinking about it. So when you're thinking about something which is adverse, what happens? The brain is constantly preparing you to catastrophize the worst possible experience that can happen related to the thought that's going on in your mind. So when you're catastrophizing or giving a projection of the worst experience that can happen, the brain goes into the limbic part, where it is only supposed to deal and help you to defend yourself and survive. So the body starts to release neurotransmitters like cortisol and adrenaline, which is very helpful, very, very helpful during the time of real danger, real threat. But when there is no real danger, but you are still catastrophizing, the brain cannot differentiate between a real danger and the imagined one. But the body functions and releases the same chemicals or neurotransmitters as if it was for real. So those excess of neurotransmitters, which are only essential when there is a real threat or a real danger, is flowing in the body in excess, and you don't know how to discharge it. So it slowly weakens the other bodily organs and the bodily functions, because when you are supposed to survive, every other function in the body is secondary. Like digestion is secondary, circulation is secondary, like any kind of appetite for food is secondary, sleep is secondary, and you will not be able to sleep. Why? The first thing that you notice when you are going through a traumatic after effect is your sleep disrupts. Because you're not supposed to sleep when there is danger, you're supposed to be in high alert, right? So your mind is getting your body ready so that you can always be on high alert, because the mind cannot differentiate between a real danger and an imagined one. So So this is how slowly, it doesn't happen in one day, for a long period of exposure to those neurotransmitters and disrupting the body's other functions weakens the body's defense system and manifests into illness. So what changes when we experience trauma? And where is it stored in the body? So let's take a look at what happens to our supercomputer when we experience or when it experiences a shock. Trauma can cause our memory processing system to malfunction. The declarative explicit memory system fails, so the traumatic memory isn't logged and stored properly. Instead, our supercomputer subverts to a simpler method of recording signals and encodes traumatic memories as pictures or body sensations. It is called dissociation. Memories are split into fragments. These remain embedded in the mind like sharp nails, and in this embedding the brain's natural recovering process. Malicious fragments can manifest as symptoms commonly associated with post-traumatic stress and increase our risk of becoming seriously physically ill. So I'll give you an example of how the memories are split into fragments, and we just remember those snapshots, those fragments. We don't remember the whole picture of everything in details. So if someone would have gone to, say, the concert where there was a terrorist attack. They were all engrossed in listening to music. They were all happy, enjoying dancing, and they were in a very, very relaxed and a peaceful state of mind without any anticipation of something like this can ever happen. But something happens, the person survives, but the trauma of that is stored in the body. So you can imagine how much time it will take for that person to again be in another concert, again be able to enjoy a live singing concert in the way that he or she used to in the past. And every memory attached to the moments before the bomb blast and after that, all the pictures that's collected in the mind, anything that can trigger now is the memory of the trauma, and that person can go into a hysteric reaction, believing that it's going to happen again or it's happening right now. And if this is stored in the body for a long time and the person keeps on dwelling in that, obviously this person can get into a serious physical illness. The post-traumatic stress disorder can visibly change the brain. It can visibly really change the brain. And after the 2017 Manchester suicide bombing attack, it killed 22 people at Ariana Grande's concert. She released an image of a brain scan that showed the impact of trauma on her brain. Speaking about that, she said that, "I feel like I shouldn't even be talking about my own experience, like I shouldn't even say anything. I don't think I'll ever know how to talk about it and not cry. It's hard to talk about because so many people have suffered such severe, tremendous loss. But yeah, it's a real thing." And that itself showed that one simple incident, no matter in what grand scale it was, can really impact the brain in the physical state. The three parts of the brain responsible for processing stress can change when people suffer from PTSD. The hippocampus, it shrinks. This is the center for emotions and memory. The amygdala, the function of the amygdala increases, and this is the center for creativity and rumination. So you keep on going through the same memory over and over again. The prefrontal and the anterior cingulate function decreases, The Center for More Complex Functioning like Planning and Self-Development is concerned with the prefrontal part of the brain. So with untreated trauma, we often use our survival strategies to live our everyday lives. Getting to know our specific survival style can be a big step to the road to healing and change. So now I'm going to give you examples of our survival styles that we all have. You're going to identify which is yours from the examples that I'm going to give. Just knowing that what's going on often brings relief and grows self-acceptance and compassion. And when we know what's going on, we can better support ourselves over time and pave the way for healing. So your primary style, there are three. It could be flight, it could be flight, and it could be freeze. When you picture yourself in everyday life, particularly in a stressful situation, do you have a tendency to fight? This often shows up having a quick flash of anger or frustration that is disproportionate to the situation. Getting defensive and trying to prove your case, even if you know you are wrong, or you hold your ground anyways and find it hard to admit. Raising your voice or displaying aggression, possibly getting scary to the people you love. This is the tendency to fight. Now the tendency to flee or flight. This shows up as ignoring a situation or pretending it didn't happen. Feeling like you really want to get away, run away maybe, escape. Like if you just get a fresh start, then things will change, which may show up as thinking about moving away from the situation, cities, jobs, relationships, leaving the room or conversation just abruptly because you don't want to face the situation, doing your best to avoid any and all confrontations, getting busy and preoccupying with something that's completely opposite to the situation at hand. Or you might start cleaning, knitting, something that is completely not related to the situation you're in. And these are all signs of the survival mechanism of flight. Do you have the tendency to freeze? Now check if these are your symptoms. And this looks like going completely blank, finding it hard to express anything, having little or no desire or ability to go out or make any changes of social engagement, hoping that if you get really quiet and still and you don't make any issue about what's going on, then the situation will just settle down on its own. Completely forget a stressful situation that ever happened, like you completely zone out, blank out. Even someone asks you about it, you might say, what are you talking about? Like, I have no recollection that it ever happened to me. Having time pass without any awareness, like you go completely blank, like you're sitting to watch TV, but after some time you realize that you were not there. You just don't know what was going on the television. It could go on for minutes, hours, as well as days in this way. Also, you could have a mix of response. Like many of us default to different responses in different situations. Maybe you tend to fight in some situations you want to run away, go completely blank and shut down in others. So like a virus in our coding system, unprocessed trauma memories can become sticking points that cause our mental and emotional and physical processes to malfunction. The early evidence of cellular memory shows that it's not just our brain, but our body's cells too hold on to the memory of the traumatic events. So now I'm going to ask you guys, if you have any questions, could you identify your own survival strategies? your tendencies, and if you have any questions related to that, I'm open to that now. So just let me know if you have any questions. You can write on the chat or you can just talk to me. I'm going to just ask Pia to unmute everyone. If you would like to talk, just you can. Pia, can you unmute everyone?
Hi everyone, this is Osama.
Hi Osama, this is
How are you?
Sharmishta. I'm good.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, do you have anything that you want to know about?
Yeah, to me, I understand. I've experienced most of what you exactly explained. Still, to me, it's like a rocket science. Okay. However, I just wanted like how to heal that, or how to let go, or how to survive from this trauma that I went through. I'm still suffering till now. It's really difficult. So I'm trying my best. I reached out to psychologists, psychiatrists, to you guys to try to buy the biofeedback. But I wanted to know before I start, how can I treat it, or which one is the right way to treat this?
See, first of all, Osama, I'll tell you, there is nothing that is the right or the proper way. For you, it should be the way that works for you. I mean, for every client, it's different, right? What we do in my approach, I integrate the body as well as the mind. So I first start with the body work. I teach you different ways to release the trauma from the body so that your nervous system, which is now in a shock or in a state of high alert, can become balanced. Once the nervous system is balanced and you are in a stable condition, the body becomes stable and it's sending message to the brain all the time. The body is gets the first response from the brain that things are not right, so the body starts to act accordingly. But when the body, it's the other way it functions when the trauma is over. You see, we are animals, so our body functions in the same way as animals does. So can you imagine now, I always give this example to my clients, like a gazelle, for example, is caught in the grip of a tiger or a lion, right? And the gazelle is about to die. And at that moment, at that very moment, the gazelle has this last survival technique, which is the freeze mechanism. Yeah, it's a freeze mechanism where the animal acts dead. It holds its breath, it stiffens its body and the muscles and everything. And the predator, just for a few moments, gets confused, thinking that maybe the animal is already dead. And there is a characteristic of predators that they don't eat dead meat. They like the chase, they kill the chase, and then they like to eat it. So if the animal is already dead, they do lose the interest. And when they loosen the grip, it is at that very moment that the gazelle again springs to life and runs for his life. The last possible escape that he has, he runs for his life. And when he is in a clearing away from that tiger, now his body has to come back from that flight and fight to a balanced state. So you will see that the gazelle will now, I'm sorry, like you will see, I'm saying as if this is what we see every day, but maybe in some kind of documentary or somewhere you might have seen that the animal starts to shake tremendously, you know, and this shaking mechanism is what brings back the nervous system to balance. This is a kind of information. The shaking of the body, the physical body, is an information that the animal is sending into the brain, and that is like kind of giving the information to the brain, okay, it's over now, and life goes back to normal. So during therapy, the first mechanism that I teach is how to deal with the body's memory, how to deal with the trauma trapped in the body, which I use different modalities. I use the trauma release therapy. I use trauma release, the other techniques which I have learned, like embodiment technique. Then the there were different workshops that I learned. I went to throughout the world in different places, and I have like collected bits and pieces to work how to work with the body from there, and I kind of use most of it in my sessions. And I have
Hello. Hello. Sumit, are you there? Hello. I think we're all here except the tutor, right?
I'm sorry, guys. My computer froze completely. I hope you can hear me now. Are you there? Can everyone hear me? My computer has frozen and I had to disrupt the session. So Osama, I was speaking to you. What I call this process that I do with my clients, it's called past release system. Psychosomatic, anxiety, stress, trauma release therapy, through which I first help you to work with the body. Once you learn the techniques from me, then you can work on yourself. And it takes about 2 to 3 months to completely get the body back and get the nervous system completely back to balance once you work as per instructed on your own. You don't need my help after that. Initially, you need to learn those techniques from me, and after that, you're on your own, you're working on your own. But then we start working with the mind after that, so that whatever trauma experience you had, now the memory which is trapped in the mind needs to also come out. And that happens by different integration of therapy like cognitive behavioral therapy or regression therapy, or it could be just like hypnotherapy. Depends on what the client needs at that moment to deal with it. So the whole idea is to be able to release those mental programs that has been really blocking you to function to your highest potential. I don't know if I had answered your question. I have answered your question, Usama, but just let me know. Usama, are you there? Can you hear me now, everyone? Did that answer you, Usama?
Yes, mostly yes. Yes. What was interesting is, I don't know if I'm taken from the like the other participants' time, or I should book something like physically to come visit your place or something. I have felt with this thing or the trauma before it happened or before I know it. Like, I don't know, like, uh, I am the type of person who I experienced or I witnessed my dad's death,
Okay.
and I went through hard time at that time, but I went through it. And since that time, I have decided from my heart, brain, soul, everything that nothing is gonna attack me. But what I went through
Yeah.
was really, really difficult, at least to me.
Yeah,
So
definitely. Yeah.
yeah, last year I've visited so many clinics,
Hmm.
from gastroenterologists to into all the physicians, all the departments, including the
So you
family
have
doctor. Yeah.
the physical symptoms of trauma already, do you?
Yes, I had it, and that last year before I know what was going on, from like I didn't know
Okay.
what was happening. Like I felt
Okay.
it,
So
like
you
my
would go
energy
to
take
different
over.
doctors trying to resolve it.
Exactly. Everyone, all of them in 2 countries or 3 countries, all of them, they told me that it is stress. I told them there is nothing
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is unusual.
Yeah.
After some
Definitely.
time, I figure out what was happening, and I can explain in detail when I book or something like that. And then later on, the problem is when I try to ignore it, even I travel or stuff like that, so I can forget
Yeah.
something that reminds me of what happened and the situation that happened to me, even that I was not there physically, but my brain makes me imagine it to
Yeah.
a point that I cannot call it panic attack, but I get
But this is called catastrophizing, and this is a quality of the brain to create the worst scenario in your mind over and over again. And
Mhm,
again, this is a survival technique. I'll give you another example. Imagine that, like, first thing, our body is
mhm,
just as primitive as it was when we used to live in the caves. Nothing has changed, right? Nothing
mhm,
has changed drastically in our body. So imagine the caveman after the day's hunt going into the cave and finding a wild bear over there. He
mhm,
fights the bear. He overpowers the bear and kills it probably, or the bear runs away, and he is safe now. Tomorrow, in the evening, when he's coming back after hunting and he's about to enter his cave, do you think he's going to just be okay? He's going to sing a song and enter? No, right? He's going to anticipate the bear even today, and he's now going to make
mhm,
that will like play it in his mind over and over again, like how he had killed it or how he had chased it away last time, so that he is able to replicate that again this time. So actually, your brain is utilizing your skills that you have displayed in the past to sharpen it even more so that you can survive better. Okay, so this is a
mhm,
survival mechanism of our brain to catastrophize the worst situation so that in your mind you can interplay different possibilities of survival even when you're not actually facing it.
mhm.
So for you to go back in your mind to to those situations, could be many reasons. Could be also I don't know what is. I'm just assuming. Okay, here. So if it
Okay.
is not yours, it's not yours. Since I'm understanding that you were not there for during his death, I'm assuming that there could be a lot of guilt, which is the cause of this trauma. So this could
Mhm.
be the reason why it is coming back every time to you, so that you can, in some ways, what is guilt? Do you know? I mean, actually, it's a
I know what
feeling.
does it mean. Exactly. I know, like when you do something wrong and you regret it or someone blames you for it. I always
Yeah.
suffered, and the problem is the person that who caused the last trauma to me, he was fully aware, and I told him like I hate feeling guilty. So it was one of the things that they worked on, or like they played with it, like they took it as a weapon.
Yeah.
So I have been
So
suffering from guilt, although I don't do anything
yeah,
wrong. Mhm,
and this is what has been you have been carrying on to inside of you. Uh, the first conditioning that happens to every child in the planet is the
mhm,
conditioning to feel guilty,
mhm,
because we make the child feel guilty for everything that he did which was not asked him to do, which
mhm,
the adults asked him not to do, for example,
mhm,
right? And so the feeling of guilt is the first thing we teach every child. We condition the child to feel guilty so that that guilt motivates them to do something right.
Mm-hmm.
So this is how we are conditioned, Osama. And through therapy or through self-work, you have to learn how to deal with guilt in a positive way. Usually we deal with guilt in a very destructive way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
Okay.
guessing most of your trauma is related to that.
What matters, or what I think all need, is to overcome it and to heal and to go back
Yeah, of
to our
course.
best or even
That's the
more.
ultimate, yeah, that's the ultimate goal,
Mm-hmm.
right? To become whole again.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think I'm good for now.
Okay
I
then,
will.
Osama.
I
All the
will.
best.
Okay.
You have a good
Sure.
evening for the rest of the evening.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone. Thank you. I'm with you. Thank you. Bye.
Anyone else? Is there any other questions or anything that you'd like to address before I continue? No one? I'm just unmuting everyone. Everyone is unmuted from my side. If you want to unmute yourself to say something, please go ahead. Otherwise, I'll continue. No. Okay then. How does emotional neglect during childhood result in trauma among adults? What are the ways in which it manifests itself? Emotional neglect also is the perception of how you perceive that neglect in the childhood. For some kids, as you see these three mechanisms of survival, if you see in yourself, then you know which way it has affected you. Did you get into which defense mechanism have you got into due to the emotional neglect from the childhood? Based on that, you have to learn to deal with it in a different way because emotional neglect happened in the childhood. The inner sense of trauma whenever you are neglected is the trigger of today. It could be the man you're with, the relationship that you're in. It could be a boss, it could be a sibling, it could be a colleague, it could be anyone. Wherever you feel the sense of neglect, rejection, immediately you will act in among those three defense mechanisms or the survival techniques that I spoke about earlier. Whenever you feel rejected, how do you react? See to that, because you are just getting triggered now because the emotional neglect from the childhood is not being treated. So there are ways through which we heal. In our modality, in alternative therapies, we don't call it as treatment, even though it's treatment, we call it as healing because we guide the client into healing himself or herself. There is no traditional, I think when you think of healing, there is this image of someone holding you with their hands and healing you. That concept of healing is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about empowering you in ways so that through that empowerment, you now will be guided in the session to deal with that untreated trauma in the childhood and give it a positive outcome. So today as the adult, I always tell my clients this one thing and I'm going to tell it again. The only thing that is different between a child and an adult is the power of choice. The child didn't have any choice. As a child, you didn't have a choice. You were always told to do what you have to do. But as an adult, you have a choice. When you feel empowered within yourself, you integrate yourself, you become a fully embodied adult, then you know that every decision is a choice. You're not on autopilot anymore. Autopilot is what the child was in, technically. But still, as adult, you can be on autopilot, just reacting out of the emotional neglect that you had felt in the childhood, not knowing that you have a power to choose now. You can choose what you want, and you can choose according to what you as an adult want today. That's the only difference between a child and an adult. But as you see, most of us are grown in this body of an adult, but we are functioning on autopilot like a child, as if we are supposed to do things this way. No, we are not. The moment you feel that empowerment within yourself, that is the moment you know that you have the power to choose what is for the best interest of you and what is for the greater good for everyone. I hope I answered at least a little bit of what you asked, right? Is there any more questions? Thank you. So, yeah, I was basically talking about the untreated trauma and how the defense mechanisms I already spoke about. I spoke about how it affects the body, physical body, and we end up having diseases, everything. And so, what is left now? Just let me just get back to, yeah, the mixed responses I spoke about, and I was talking at the end. So, what can be done about it? What's the real thing? The real good news is that the past trauma doesn't have to affect you for your life, it's treatable, and there is help out of here. When you know what's really going on, you have the power to create the changes to heal yourself. Trauma is so much more common than most people realize, and we often think of trauma showing up as severe symptoms, extreme experiences like flashbacks and uncertain fits of rage, which doesn't happen. But the reality of untreated trauma comes in many forms, from many sources that may seem traumatic on the surface, may not seem traumatic on the surface. And so the way the survival stress shows up isn't always so obvious. So the first 5 signs of trauma. The first sign is resistance. What it looks like, being stuck all the time. If you feel that you're stuck all the time and not being able to move forward in life, if you have severe procrastinations and knowing that we need to do something but just not getting there, using common behavior change strategies such as goals, routines, and external accountability, and having these all of this not work or take any effect at all, feeling passive, invisible, or like you can't find a drive to move on with life. These are the internal response to resistance. What's the underlying survival style? This is usually a sign that someone is living more or less in the freeze portion of their autonomous nervous system. The next one is that people who eat super healthy, but still they're unwell. So it looks like you're eating well, a lot of unprocessed whole foods, exercising regularly, maybe seeing traditional or alternative medicine practitioners and following their advice relentlessly, still having digestive troubles, still having all sort of chronic health troubles, not being able to lose the body fat. And what is the survival style that is underlying? That's occurring in a lot of these people, and the research backs up that in these people they have physiological system that is also in the freeze mode. The physiology is in the freeze mode, not the mind, but the physiology is in the freeze mode here. Their metabolism is super slow. They don't get enough oxygen to their cells, and there is this threat mechanism inside signaling danger all the time. So even though they are active in their pursuit for better health, these behaviors lose over the primitive nervous system, and the physiology gets affected, and as if it is in hibernation. And the third, and it is mostly prevalent these days, is the feeling of anxiety and fear, and even panic attacks for no apparent reasons. It looks like, how does it look like? Having like if someone is having a mindfulness practice or a cognitive based practice and still being anxious all the time, even having panic attacks. Setting up the day to win with strategies and good healthy routines and still being filled with fear and uncertainty. Feeling a lot in the body, like butterflies in the stomach, agitation, tightness in the solar plexus, chest and throat, tightness in the jaw, or not feeling much at all in the body. They are loud or negatively focused thoughts, always thinking negative. And what is the underlying survival style? The autonomic nervous system is looking for threat on the outside and is wanting to fight or run away. And these survival patterns will keep showing up over and over again until they are faced and worked through, because they are not coming from the outside and the present moment. They are coming from the inside physiology that is still stuck in the past. The fourth is being caught in a cycle of toxic relationships and self-sabotage. How does it look like? Staying in an unsatisfied or a toxic relationship, not knowing why they can't change unhealthy relationship patterns, finding it hard to set clear boundaries or to make choices swiftly, may also be disconnected from the gut instinct and what feels instinctively safe or unsafe, being toxic to oneself, as well as having the inability to push ahead in the realms of career and self-expression. Tough to be a reliable witness for oneself. And what is the underlying survival mechanism for these people? When our body and nervous system is living in a lot of survival stress and all it knows is danger and threat, it is next to impossible to accurately judge the environment and know what is safe and not safe. This is often a sign that someone may have experienced very early childhood trauma or misattunement. With this sign, there is often a combination of fight and flight and freeze mechanism. The fifth is chronic physical and mental health conditions. And how does it look like? Chronic illness, conditions like fibromyalgia, burnout, Crohn's disease, IBS, autoimmune problems, depression, anxiety, migraine headaches, insomnia, and other sleep abnormalities, chronic fatigue or chronic pain, anything where the system is lacking energy and poor immune system health, and the body struggles to recover, regenerate, and repair. Seeing many health providers without getting real answers or lasting results. Hearing that what they are experiencing is all in the head. What's the underlying survival style? Stored up survival stress physiology is causing the autonomic nervous system to be dysregulated. And that dysregulation is impacting the physical body, the physical system. This is often the case here. What is often the case here is fight and flight. Is fight and flight that's buried under the freeze. So the sources of trauma is the last thing that I'm going to talk about is the sources of trauma. There is the shock trauma. The shock is what we tend to think of most of the time when we think of trauma. We think of an accident like a crazy downhill ski racer or a car hitting you or a bike or breaking an arm or a leg. And this is a shock to the body. The body got a little hurt, but the body recovered. But the shock is more prominent and more lasting in the mind. Natural disasters also, if people have been living in zones where there were earthquakes or hurricanes or any tsunamis, that also creates a natural shock in the body as well as the mind. Or even sexual abuse, verbal abuse can also cause this shock trauma. The next is the accumulated stress. The accumulated stress is something most people wouldn't think of as traumatic. But over time, just living in industrial cultures can be traumatic. We accumulate our stresses due to our work environment, not enough time to ourselves, so much bills to pay, families to take care of, not enough sleep, etc. If you think back to that swimming pool with too many beach balls inside, this would be accumulated stress that's going to wreak havoc on the nervous system as well as the body over time. What I'll call the other part is the medical trauma. And this is something that is in a broader category. But it's important to tell you about it because all too often it goes overlooked as a possible reason someone might be struggling in their life even after years that the incident has taken place. And that's what is classified as medical or anesthesia trauma, or as well as near-death experiences and experiences where something happens to someone when they are unconscious, for example, like if they are drugged, medical procedures that might be considered routine, such as maybe a simple tonsillectomy, or setting a bone after a fracture, or even a routine doctor's appointment with a doctor who has really poor bedside manners can lead us to trapping our survival stress reactions, those flight, fight, and freeze reactions inside. And the early development trauma, which is actually the most common type in today's society. This is a big category, so for the sake of simplicity, let's just consider it as scary things that happen to us under the age of 3 or while we were still in the uterus of our mother. Another type of early and developmental trauma, while lesser known to most, is actually one of the more common types, and that is not having secure attachment and healthy attunement from a reliable parent or adult caregiver. This type of trauma has a lot to do with why we get stuck in survival mode and why it can be so hard to heal. Therapy can help in unlocking or processing the traumatic memories, releasing them from being trapped in your system. So, from the traumatic memory, when it is reintegrated in the mind and the body, the brain can heal, the body can heal, and we can live a more wholer life. And it's possible. That's what I just want to give you this message that it's possible. It's not a miracle. It's not something that happens, okay, instantly, but there are ways through which you have to understand this one simple thing that is different about the mind and the body. The mind, even when you are in the present, can travel in the past or to the future. Through the power of imagination, you can travel. But the body cannot travel in the past or to the future. The body needs a specific time and a specific space to actualize the healing. So, right now, at this moment, you are doing therapy, for example, but the body needs to actualize it. The body has to go back to harmony again. And the body hasn't become disharmonious or unbalanced just after one day or after one incident. It took years and years of being trapped in that trauma for the body to finally show signs and symptoms. So you have to be patient with your body. That's why in my approach, I integrate the body and the mind therapy. so that you can continue your work with the body after you learn the techniques, and not to give up. Once you start to feel good, please do not give up, because most of the time I see there is a tendency to give up on this work that we do. Once the sessions are over, the clients just feel, oh, I'm feeling good and I don't need to continue. And then the relapse happens, because it takes time for neuroplasticity to happen. It takes time for the brain to start to think differently, to function differently. And for that different to be permanent, it needs hard work. So, really, it is possible, but at the same time, it's not magic. It needs a lot of commitment from your behalf as well as from mine to make it possible. So, please keep that in mind. And thank you all. Thank you, everyone who is here today, who participated and was here to support. I hope you go back with something at least, if not a lot. And wishing you a very good night. Have a good rest of the night. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Sarmishta. Thank you, sweetie. Amazing as always.
Thank you, Bhavna. Thank you for being here.
No,
I
thank
really
you so
appreciate
much.
the support. Thank you
No,
so much, Bhavna.
thank you so much for sharing your amazing knowledge with us. Thank you. It was
Thank you
very,
so
very
much.
helpful. Take
Thank you
care.
so much. You too.
Not it. Bye.
Bye.